sure if you've had this experience. I know I've had it many times. And the experience is you go to bed feeling good, you go to bed just fine, and then in the middle of the night, has anybody ever woken up sick? In the middle of the night, you go to bed fine, just fine. But then around 2, 3 in the morning, you wake up and you feel awful, you feel horrible. Uh, Does that ever happen to any of you? You go to bed just fine, and then 2, 3 in the morning, I found myself sometimes in the toilet just throwing up. I mean, it's just the worst feeling when you wake up in the middle of the night and your stomach is growling and you know it's about to come, so you get up and you run, you hit yourself on the bed, almost break a toe, run into the toilet because it's come. Has anybody ever had those experiences where you just feel awful and you're throwing up, but you went to bed fine. You went to bed just fine, but something woke you up, and you know something is wrong. You know something is wrong. You don't know what it is, but something is wrong because I wouldn't be up at 2 in the morning throwing up, puking my guts out. You know something is wrong. Most likely you have some type of bug. Maybe you even got what they call food poisoning. You ate something that you should not have ate and it came with some type of bacteria. There's something wrong. There's something wrong. Because if I wasn't throwing up, then I'd be fine. But the fact that I'm throwing up and awake at 2, 3 in the morning lets me know there's something inside of me. There's something inside of me that needs to come out, that's trying to, escape. That's why I'm up at 2 or 3 in the morning. I don't know what it is, but I know there's something wrong inside of me. There's a virus. There's a bug. There's something. I just don't know what it is, but I know I have something. The reason I share that or bring that up is because today I want to talk about another deadly virus. A deadly virus that's also inside of us. And that just like that bug, you don't see it, whatever is wrong with it, but you see the manifestations, you see the signs of it, the throwing up, the puking, the up at 2 and 3 in the morning. It's the same thing with this virus that we have. We don't see it, but we see the signs. We see what it causes. And it's also deadly. It's also terrible. So terrible that God in His Word says it over and over. I hate this. God says it. We all know love is a God of love. But there's certain things that God hates. God abhors. God detests. And that is the virus called pride. Pride. Say pride, guys. Pride. That's a virus, deadly virus that not you, but all of us are carrying inside of us. A virus called pride. That's horrible. It's terrible. It's one of the most deadliest viruses in the Bible. The virus of pride. Pride to the point where I'm telling you, you cannot read the Bible without seeing how God expresses his pleasure with this virus, with this disease that we carry. He hates it because he knows what the potential is. That if you don't overcome pride, he knows what will happen to the majority of humans if you don't overcome pride. If pride overcomes you, if pride overcomes me, it has the possibility, the potential of not only ruining, destroying your life here on this earth, but also on the life after this one. Pride will destroy your life here on this earth, but it will also send you to a place separated from God called hell. That's how terrible pride is. It can destroy your life here, destroy it completely. In the worst part, which this life is temporary, it can also destroy you eternally, separate you from God forever, ever. You will never have access to God. So this is a very deadly virus. And it's so deadly, it's so horrible, that God in his wisdom, recorded a story for us. He recorded a story that happened to a man to use him as an example of what happens when we have pride and when we let pride overcome us. God, when he was, writing the book of Daniel through his prophet, he had his prophet Daniel record us a story about a man who was overcome with pride. He recorded it for us. We're going to read that story about this king. Does anybody recall the name of the king that we've been studying for the last few weeks? Does anybody remember the name? Nebuchadnezzar. We've been reviewing this king's life in the book of Daniel. He plays a very important role in Daniel's life in the book of Daniel. In chapter 1, we learn that King Nebuchadnezzar, the king of what empire? Babylon. He's the king of the Babylonian Empire. They are the most powerful empire at that time in history. And he is responsible for overcoming many nations, including Judah, including Israel. And he takes some of the best of Judah, of Israel's men, back to Babylon, including Daniel. That's what chapter 1 showed us about the king Nebuchadnezzar. In chapter 2, does anybody remember what happened in chapter 2 of the book of Daniel? What happened? He had a dream. Do you remember what the dream was? It was a dream of a statue. He dreamed a statue. And he didn't know what it was, what it meant, so he had wanted somebody to explain it to him, and that's where Daniel comes in and tells him, well, King, the dream that you had means this, and means that. That's what happens in chapter 2. In chapter 3, we also have, chapter 2 was the dream, and chapter 3 is where he builds the statue of gold. And he wants people to bow down to it and worship it. And that's where we see Daniel's 3 friends. Does anybody remember Daniel's 3 friends' name? One of them? Do you know one of the names of his Daniel's friend? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. That's where those 3 friends, they choose when everybody falls and bows down to the statue of gold that King Nebuchadnezzar had built. These 3 men stayed standing up. They didn't bow down. So that's what we see in chapter 3. And chapter 3 ends with King Nebuchadnezzar saying, I decree that everybody who says anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego will be cut into pieces, their houses turned into piles, for no other God can say, because he testified to God's power. So he declares that the God of these 3 young men, he is the God of gods. That's what happens in chapter 3. Chapter 4, which is the chapter we're going to read today, I need you to keep this in mind. 25 years have happened, approximately. From chapter 3 to chapter 4, there's a gap of about 25 years. It's not immediately. It's a gap of about 25 years in the history of this king's life. So chapter 4 is 25 years later from what happened in chapter 3. And in chapter 4, King Nebuchadnezzar gives us his testimony. He gives us a testimony of something that happened to him. And let's read it. Because in chapter 4, what are we going to talk about today? What did we say we're going to talk about? Huh? Chapter 4, what do we say we're going to talk about today? A disease called pride. A disease, a deadly virus. And in chapter 4, like I said, it's Nebuchadnezzar's dream or story, testimony, whatever we want to call it. But in chapter 4, we are going to see the symptom of pride. What is the symptom? Okay, remember, we're seeing pride as a disease, as a virus, as a deadly bug, whatever you want to call it. So as every disease, it has a symptom, it has side effects, and it has a cure. And that's what chapter 4 represents to us. Chapter 4 will show us the symptoms of pride. It will also show us the side effect of pride. And then at the end, it shows us what the cure of pride is. So let's read. Let's start with the symptom. Let's go. Chapter 4, we're going to read it. We're going to read only verse 1 through 28, and then we'll continue. 1 through 27. Listen to the king's story. You can read it up there within the screen if you have your Bible, but pay close attention to his story. King Nebuchadnezzar, that's how it starts. He's writing his story, he's writing his testimony. He says, to the nations and people of every language who live in all the earth. I want everybody to hear what happened to me. That's what he's saying in verse 1. I want everybody to hear what happened to me. May you prosper greatly. It is my pleasure to tell you about the miraculous signs and wonders that the Most High God has performed to me. I want you to hear what happened to me. Please listen to me. This is what happened. Verse 3. How great are his signs, how mighty his wonders. His kingdom is an eternal kingdom. His dominion endures from generation to generation. So he starts by praising God because he remembers exactly what happened to him. Verse 4. I, Nebuchadnezzar, was one day at home in my palace, content and prosperous. I had a dream that made me afraid. I was lying in bed. The images and visions that passed through my mind terrified me. So I commanded that all these wise men of Babylon be brought before me to interpret the dream for me. So he has another dream. When the magicians, enchanters, astrologers, and diviners came, I told them the dream, but they could not interpret it for me. Finally, Daniel came into my presence, and I told him the dream. He is called Belshazzar after the name of my God, and the spirit of the holy gods is him. I said, Belshazzar, chief of the magicians, I know the spirit of the holy gods is in you, and no mystery is too difficult for you. Here is my dream, interpret it for me. These are the visions that I saw while lying in bed. I looked, and therefore before me stood a tree in the middle of the land. Its height was enormous. The tree grew large and strong, and its top touched the sky. It was visible to the ends of the earth. Its leaves were beautiful, its fruit abundant, and on it was food for all. Under it the wild animals found shelter, and the birds lived in its branches. From it every creature was fed. In the visions I saw while lying in bed, I looked, and therefore before me was a holy one, a messenger coming down from heaven. He called in a loud voice, cut down the tree and trim off its branches, strip off its leaves and scatter its fruit. Let the animals flee from under it and the birds from its branches, but let the stump and its roots bound with iron and bronze remain in the ground and the grass of the field. Let him be drenched with the dew of heaven, and let him live with the animals among the plants of earth. Let his mind be changed from that of a man, and let him be given the mind of an animal, till 7 times pass by for him. The decision is announced by messengers. The holy ones declare their verdict, so that the living may know that the Most High is sovereign over all kingdoms on earth, and gives them to anyone he wishes, and sets over them the lowest of people. This is the dream that I, King Nebuchadnezzar, had. Now, Belshazzar, tell me what it means, for none of these wise men in my kingdom can interpret it for me, but you can, because the spirit of the holy gods is in you. Then Daniel, also called Belshazzar, was greatly perplexed for a time, and in his thoughts terrified him. So the king said, Belshazzar, do not let the dream or its meaning alarm you. Belshazzar answered, my lord, if only the dream applied to your enemies and its meaning to your adversaries. The tree you saw, which grew large and strong, with its top touching the sky, visible to the whole earth, with beautiful leaves and abundant fruit, providing food for all, giving shelter to the wild animals, and having nesting places in its branches for the birds. Your majesty, you are that tree. You have become great and strong. Your greatness has grown until it reaches the sky, and your dominion extends to distant parts of the earth. Your majesty saw a holy one, a messenger, coming down from heaven and saying, cut down the tree and destroy it, but leave the stump bound with iron and bronze. In the grass of the field, while its roots remain in the ground, let him be drenched with the dew of heaven. Let him live with the wild animals until 7 times pass by for him. This is the interpretation, your majesty, and this is the decree the Most High has issued against my lord the king. You will be driven away from people and will live with the wild animals. You will eat grass like the ox and be drenched with the dew of heaven. 7 times will pass by for you until you acknowledge that the Most High is sovereign over all the kingdoms on earth and gives them to anyone he wishes. The command to leave the stump in the tree with its roots means that your kingdom will be restored to you when you acknowledge that the heaven rules. Therefore, your majesty, be pleased to accept my advice. Renounce your sins by doing what is right, and your wickedness by being kind to the oppressed. It may be that your prosperity will continue. Verse 28, all this happened to King Nebuchadnezzar 12 months later. As the king was walking on the roof of the royal palace of Babylon, he said, is not this great Babylon I have built as the royal residence by my mighty power and for the glory of my majesty? We're going to start right there. He starts with the dream. He doesn't understand the dream. Daniel explains the dream. But the hard part about this dream is that Daniel says this dream is talking about you. King, you are that tree. You're the kingdom, but it's going to get cut down. Daniel tells him you're going to be punished for your attitude, for your pride. That's what he tells him. But 12 months later, I guess the king, as he shows throughout these pages, he's very forgetful. He forgets about it. And 12 months later, after Daniel interpreted the king, the dream that he had, he says that the king is walking in his palace. And here he goes. Here goes the symptom of pride. The symptom of pride. He looks at his palace. He looks at his kingdom as he's walking on the tower. And there he says these words in verse 30. Is not this the great Babylon I have built as the royal residence by my mighty power and for the glory of my majesty? So exactly what Daniel told him was going to happen is happening. The king attributes everything that he has accomplished, everything that he has obtained, fulfilled. He takes credit for who? For himself. Nowhere do you find the king giving anybody credit. Nobody gets credit but himself. He gives no credit to anybody, and the worst part, he gives no credit to God. No credit whatsoever. That is the first in the sign of pride at its fullest. When you give nobody credit. When you completely take everybody out, and especially God, out of your life. I give him no credit for nothing. That is the biggest sign of pride. That is pride at its fullest. That is pride when it's alive. I give no credit. I give no honor. I give no glory. Everything that I have obtained, everything that I have fulfilled, all my goals, all my achievements, I've done it. I've been able to fulfill. I'm the one, and it's for my credit, for my glory. That is pride. When you give, never do you acknowledge God. As King Nebuchadnezzar, as you notice, he never acknowledges God. He never for one moment does he stop to reflect, to think, to thank the source of his life, the source of his health, the source of his strength. He completely takes God out of the picture. I give him absolutely zero, none, no honor, no gratitude, no glory. That is pride. That is pride. Pride is not the way you dress, the way you drive. Pride is an attitude of the heart. Pride is something that's internal. We think that person, because he drives that or he carries this, that's a proud person. No, pride, according to the scriptures, is an attitude of the heart where you completely take God out of the picture and you give all the credit to yourself, and you walk around without God in your mind. Give him no acknowledgement, no signs of gratitude, of glory. Completely, you give credit to yourself. Like he says in verse 30. Read it again, verse 30. This says, is not this the great Babylon I have built? Is the bank account that I have, I made my bank account. The riches that I have, I did it. My followers, I obtained them. It is me. It is me who has done all of this. That's what he is saying. I am the source of everything. So in other words, he completed to God, and what he said, these were his words. If we translate him to our language, to our times, I am a self-made person. I am a self-made millionaire. I am a self-made success. I am influencer. I am a self-made, whatever you want to call it. I am self-made. That's what he's saying. I am self-made. Nobody helped me. Nobody gave me nothing. I did it. I'm the one that has, I've had people tell me that. There was once, this guy told me that he never said, I think we were having a conversation, and I said, thanks to God. And it's a Spanish-speaking person, and I said, gracias a Dios. And his words to me was, gracias a Dios for what? And he left me shocked because I didn't expect that from him in my conversation with him. I didn't expect that because I said it just as a normal way of having a conversation. I said, gracias a Dios, thanks to God. And his words to me was, thanks to God for what? I said, for what? Well, he goes, I'm the one that get up in the morning. I'm the one that goes to work. I'm the one that busts my butt out there. I'm the one doing this. I'm the one doing that. And so he considers himself to be the self-made. So he said, I have nothing to thank him for because I do it all on my own. Those were his words. So there's people like King Nebuchadnezzar that completely don't acknowledge God. Completely say, it is because of me. And I want to read to you what James 1:17 says. James 1:17. You have it up there? Listen to what James says. So you won't never forget this. James 1:17. It says these words. Every good what? And perfect what? Where does it come from? Every good, perfect gift is from above. It comes down from the Father. Everything you have in life, whether you acknowledge it or not, it is regardless or pointless what you think. I'm letting you know, the Bible, God says, everything good that you have has come down from heaven. It pleased him to give you good gifts. To give you health, to give you your daily bread, to give you a roof, to give you shelter, to give you clothing, to give you the necessities of life. God has given them to you. God has been good to you and giving you, and He has given them to us. The problem is that we look at the bad things and therefore we grow a resentful heart and we don't stop to think, yes, I have something bad here, something bad happened here, but overall my life is good. And so therefore I never stop to be thankful, to be grateful, because I'm so resentful. I'm looking at the bad. I'm looking at the bad thing or the awful thing, and you never stop to think, God has given me good gifts. I have good things in my life, but you never appreciate the good that God has given you. We never give him glory. We never give him praise because pride is holding you back. Pride is not letting you express gratitude. Pride is making you grudgeful, resentful. Pride, I'm telling you, is a very, very deadly virus. You don't realize that the reason you have wisdom, the reason you have wisdom is because God has given you wisdom. You don't stop to think that the reason you can read, the reason you can do your science, your work, the reason you can function is because God gave you the ability to function. Who do you think wired you? Who do you think put your neurons and your protons and your nerve? Who do you think did that? You think it was just luck, science? But that's pride. That's what pride does. Pride doesn't let you see that. Pride makes you this short vision person where you're only seeing the bad, and you don't stop to think, man, the fact that I was able to get up today, the fact that I was able to wake up and come out and see the sun, that is a gift. That is a gift that God is giving you. That is the gift that you were able to get up and have a breakfast meal. The fact that you're able to go have lunch today. Those are God gifts. But pride is not letting you see that. Pride blinds you like it blinded the king. He says, it's all about me. It's all about me. I'm responsible for what I've created. That's the number one symptom of what? Of pride. That's what you call an arrogant person. And I'm going to tell you again, it doesn't matter if you're rich or poor. There's poor, arrogant people, and there's rich, arrogant people. There's people that are super smart, that are arrogant, and there's people that are not as smart and they're arrogant. There's arrogance in everything. It's not a matter of culture. It's not a matter about skin color or intellect. It's not a matter. It's a matter of the heart. And all of us have it. And so you give no credit. You give no credit. Can I ask you something, y'all? Most of y'all are young. What happened? What would happen in school if you wrote an essay and you use sources and you write sources and you write quotes? What would happen if you gave no credit to that source? What would happen? I think warning, because they can flag you as doing a what? It starts with the P. Plagiarism. Because you gave no credit. One of the worst parts of writing essay papers was not so much the actual essay. It was writing the citations. That's what I hated writing about essays, because you had to go back and everything you had to cite, and especially they had a certain format that they requested, because by law, you have to cite the source. You have to give credit. Because if you don't give credit, like we say, we're plagiarizing. And you're taking credit for something that you didn't come up with. And so in the real physical world, if you don't do that, you get in trouble. You can fail. You can get plagiarized. And we understand that. But when it comes to the spiritual, we don't understand when we don't give God credit. You understand how it works down here, but when it comes to the spiritual side, we act like we don't know. And just like out there, you will be flagged as plagiarism, sent to the D, be expelled, fail your class. The same way what God is showing. When you give me no credit, I might let you get along with it for a while, but eventually it will catch up. Are we understanding, guys? Pride is a deadly virus that does not allow you to give God credit. You never acknowledge and recognize it. That's what pride does. And I'm gonna continue, but I just want to let y'all know we live in a day and age where we are suffering from this disease called entitlement. Does anybody know what entitlement means? You know what our generation is suffering from today? It's called entitlement. Entitlement believes we deserve. I deserve everything. I deserve this. I deserve that. I'm going to tell you, and I know I'm not popular for saying this, but you don't deserve nothing. There's only one thing you and I deserve. But God in His mercy does not give it to us. He gives us His love, His care. But this entitlement mentality is the root, is the cause of all this pride, because we think we deserve nothing. Everything that God gives us is because of His grace and His mercy. And that's what God is saying, is pride. Pride completely blocks that out, completely exalts yourself to a place that you don't belong, and you don't acknowledge that who you are, what you have, what you fulfill, what you will be in life. Everything is what did James say? It is a what? A gift from God. If you don't acknowledge it, listen to what happens. Listen. Okay, so that was the symptom. That was just the symptom. You want to see what God does? Just so you can see the side effects. The symptom is no glory, no credit to God, no acknowledgement of God. It's all me, me, me. It's all, everything revolves around I. Okay, that's the symptom. What's the side effect? Let's read 31. 4:31. This is a side effect. Verse 31. After he said those words, listen, even as the words were on his lips, as he was saying what we read on verse 30, a voice came from heaven. Listen to what the voice said. This is what is decreed for you, King Nebuchadnezzar. Your royal authority has been taken from you. You will be driven away from people and will live with the wild animals. You will eat grass like the ox. 7 times just means 7 years. 7 times will pass by for you until you what? Acknowledge that the Most High is sovereign over all the kingdoms on earth and gives them to anyone he wishes. 33. Immediately, what had been said about Nebuchadnezzar was fulfilled. He was driven away from people. He was driven away. Remember those words. He was driven away from people. A grass like the ox. His body was drenched with the dew of heaven, until his hair grew like the feathers of an eagle, and his nails like the claws of the birds of a bird. Can you put that image, just so you can get an image of what King sort of looked like? This is just sort of what we think he might have looked like when this happened. If she'll put the image on the screen. Just so you can get an idea. He went from a king full of splendor. Now he's been driven out. And he looks like a beast. He went from glory to a beast. Does anybody here know who this happened to other than King Nebuchadnezzar? Does anybody here know somebody else that was driven out because of pride? Who? Somebody else. This happened to another being. He was driven out. And he went from glory to evil. Does anybody know who? The enemy that we have today called the devil. Do y'all know that the devil is a result of pride? Do y'all know that the devil one time was not the devil, he was actually a beautiful angel that was part of God's creation in heaven? Do y'all know that? Listen to Ezekiel 28. Listen to what God says in Ezekiel 28 about this angel. Through your widespread trade, you were filled with violence and you sinned. So I drove you in disgrace from the mounts of God. I expelled you. The same thing he did to the king, guardian cherub, from among the fiery stones. Your heart became what? Proud. Because you looked at your beauty and you corrupted your wisdom because of your splendor. So I threw you to the earth and I made a spectacle of you before kings. So right there, he's describing the fall of Satan. His heart became proudful, looking at his beauty, his wisdom, his splendor. He thought it was great. He thought he was the best. He wanted to be like God, and God expelled the devil just like he did. And that beautiful angel is now what we know as the devil. All because of pride. When I read Daniel chapter 4, and I see what happened to King Nebuchadnezzar, if that happened today in 2024, what would we be saying about Nebuchadnezzar? If this happened today, and we saw a king going from his palace to the fields, eating like an ox with his nails and eating out there with grass with the bees, what would be how will we address it or describe it in 2024? Does anybody know? Monster? Mental. We would be saying he's having mental problems. That's what we would say in 2024 is mental health. That's what we would describe it. And it's not mental health. It's God judging him. It's God taking his favor away from him, taking his grace away. I gave you everything, King, and you didn't want to acknowledge me. You didn't want to give me glory, so I take my hand. And so therefore, the king fell into despair, fell into this state of well, how will we call it, of craziness, of looking like a beast, acting like a beast, completely separated from others, because he lost God's grace, because he did not acknowledge. You know what I read? I read, and this is not in Bible, I read in other books, but I read the most depressed people are the most narcissistic people. They say that narcissism and depression go hand to hand. If you're narcissistic, you will be depressed. That's what the study that they did is narcissism and depression go hand in hand. Do you know what a narcissistic is? It's somebody who only thinks of himself. It's somebody whose life revolves around himself. It's somebody who thinks only about himself. They say that a narcissistic person is more likely to be depressed, more likely to be completely separated from society, not able to relate with others. That's what this study that I was reading about, these two, they go hand in hand. They do not create a happy person. They create a person that is depressed because all they think is me, me, me. All focus is on me. And so at the end, it kind of takes you away like it took King. It separated him. It alienated him. Because, listen to James 4:6. James 4:6. What does it say in James 4:6? God what? God opposes who? 1 Peter 5:5. There's another writer. At the bottom, God opposes the proud. Matthew 23:12. Those who exalt themselves, they will be humble. Pride puts you in opposition to God. You know what opposition means? It means it's like you're going to a fight. That's what the word oppose means. It's like you're going into a fight. Like it's a fight. It's a battle between you and God. That's what pride does. God goes into battle with you. God goes into a battle, and you can see he overcame the angel, he overcame the king, and he will overcome all those who oppose him. And that's what when God goes into a fight, you will be depressed, you will be full of anxiety, full of so many of these things that we call today mental health. But the result, or the reason, better yet, is because we don't want God. We reject God. We don't want God in our life. So therefore, we end up in a similar condition as the king did, because we're in opposition to him. And since we're in opposition to him, I end up in a very, very slow, sad life. I'm going to finish this point. Pride will destroy relationships. Pride will destroy relationships. The proud person, it's so hard for him or her to have a social life. It's so hard because any wrong that somebody does, you let out your heart become angry. You don't forgive. And so pride is making you into this unsociable person. You can't relate, you can't have friendship, you can't have relationship. Families that I've known have been destroyed because of this evil that we carry called pride, because pride overcame me. So families, relationships, churches, pride has the potential of destroying many relationships just because I am not going to ask for forgiveness. I am not going to ask for forgiveness, and I'm not going to forgive, or I'm not going to ask for forgiveness. And so therefore it destroys relationships. So guys, you really want pride to overcome you? It can destroy your life. It can destroy your tranquility. It can destroy you. And that's what Daniel 4 is showing us. Arrogance, take God out of the picture. I don't acknowledge God. I give all myself credit. I end up like the beast, a loner, no relationship, depressed, anxiety. So how do we cure this? How do we cure this disease? Verse 34. Verse 34. Listen to the cure. At the end of time, I, Nebuchadnezzar, what did he do now? He raised his eyes toward heaven. And his sanity was restored. Then I praised the Most High. I honored and I glorified him who lives forever. His dominion is an eternal dominion. His kingdom endures from generation to generation. All the peoples of the earth are regarded as nothing. He does as he pleases with the powers of heaven and the peoples of the earth. No one can hold back his hand or say to him, "What have you done?" At that same time, my sanity was restored. My honor and splendor were returned to me for the glory of my kingdom. My advisors and nobles sought me out, and I was restored to my throne and became even greater than before. This is how he finished. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise. Now I exalt him. Now I glorify the King of heaven, because everything he does is right and all his ways are just. All those who walk in pride, he is able to humble. Now I recognize him. Do you want to go through that in order for you to acknowledge? Do you want to go through that? What is that called? Here's the cure, guys. What I read right here. What restored him? What brought him back to his place? Simple. It's called humility. Humility. The opposite of pride is humility. What is humility? Let me read what this author said about humility, which I think is a very good definition. Humility, and I'm going to give him credit. I'm going to cite his name is C.S. Lewis. This is what he wrote. Humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's not, I'm so bad, I'm so this, that's not what humility is. It's not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking about yourself less. So it's not thinking less of myself, it's thinking about myself less. Your life does not revolve around you. You are not the center of attention, of attraction. I am not the center of attention or attraction. It's not about me. Everything I do is thinking of others and thinking especially of God's glory. Listen to Philippians chapter 2, verse 3. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves. Not looking to your own interest, but each of you to the interest of others. Don't do nothing out of vain conceit for your conceit, for your vain conceit, for your selfish ambition. Everything you do, look at thinking about others. Do you know who had this mindset of thinking of others rather than himself? Do y'all know who did? Who gave us this example? Guys, God is not asking you to do anything he hasn't done already. Philippians 2, verse 3. We're going to read. Do nothing out of some ambition or conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves. Verse 4. Not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interest of others. Verse 5. In your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus, who being in the very nature of God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. And being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. Therefore, God exalted him to the highest place and gave him the name that is above every name. That the name of Jesus, every knee will bow in heaven and earth and under the earth. And every tongue acknowledges that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. Jesus humbled himself in order to restore mine and your relationship with God. He wasn't thinking about himself. He was thinking about me and you. And so what God is asking me to do, he already did it. Humble yourself. Stop walking in so much pride. Stop being so arrogant, so prideful, so resentful. Stop. You're not the main character. You're just a small character in this book called life. God is the author. Give him glory. Give him praise. That's what you were created for. That's what I was created for. To give him glory. To give him praise. Everything I do, everything I accomplish, everything that I fulfill is for one purpose. Not for my glory, not for my name. Everything that I fulfill or obtain in this life is for God's glory. So everything that I do and I obtain, I immediately, as Nebuchadnezzar teaches us, look unto the heavens, look up and say, thank you, God. Thank you, Lord. I give you glory, for it is because of you. Every time, give him glory, because you don't want to find out the hard way what happens if you are pride, if you let this disease overpower you. Humble yourselves. 1 Peter 5:6. Humble yourselves under God's mighty hand. He will lift you in due time. But humble yourself. What we